Thanks for tuning in to this week's installment of Ask a Yoga Question, where I answer readers' yoga questions on my blog. The first question. Hi Candice, I love these questions and answers. I always learn something new. I have recently been diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome, and yoga causes a lot of pain with plank pose, chaturanga, downward dog, and tabletop. I wondered what your tips were for maybe replacing these poses for other poses. The best thing to do to take pressure off the wrists is to come onto your forearms. So for chaturanga, we're normally here with the wrists, elbows, and shoulders stacked in one line. If this is too much for your wrists, you can just come down onto your forearms. And same goes for side plank. Instead of being up on the forearms, up on the wrists, you can come onto the forearms. And for downward facing dog, just take it down to the forearms as well. Question 2. Do you have any tips for back drops? I get really nervous when I do them. Drop backs can be really scary, so I suggest having somebody that you trust, who's pretty strong, to spot you. Now, a spotter is going to take a big stance like this. He's going to get kind of low or loose in his legs and bring one arm out to just be there for support. You probably won't really do it very much, but just be there just in case you need it. Oftentimes, I feel like it's more of a mental thing, and it's more of a fear-based thing rather than an ability-based thing. So, we're going to start with the feet just a tad wider than hip distance. And to do some prep poses, you can just bring your hand to your hips, press, lean back, just hang out there, and when you feel comfortable, lift up. When you're ready to go into it and you have your spotter there, I'll lift my arms, bend my legs, press my hips forward, let my head go, and then I'm going to lean back and catch myself. And the spotter's there to help me in case I didn't catch myself. And then from here, you can just come down and relax. If you're going to continue practicing your back bends, don't do a counter stretch. Just relax here. And then when you're ready to complete your back bend practice, you can just bring both legs in for a little counter stretch. Question 3. Hi Candice, I recently decided to begin incorporating those poses I typically avoid in my daily practice. One of those poses is Wild Thing or Flip the Dog. As I was rotating back out of Wild Thing the other day, my shoulder popped rather painfully. I was wondering if you have any recommendations on the best ways in and out of that pose. Anything I should be aware of in terms of alignment? Are there other poses that would better prepare me and my shoulders for Wild Thing? So there are a couple prep poses for Wild Thing. The first one I would recommend is Downward Facing Dog. The second one I'd recommend is Side Plank. And lastly, Extended Side Angle Pose. And I'll put links below. To Wild Thing pose, start in Downward Facing Dog. Now you'll notice that my shoulder is behind my wrist. It's going to stay like that throughout Wild Thing. So when I'm ready, I'll lift the leg, bend the knee, open up the hip, open, 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 until it comes back. Keeping my shoulder behind the wrist, I'll lift up. And then from here, you can either come to three-legged dog or step up to the front of the mat. Hi Candice, thanks to your amazing retreat in Sifnos last year, I am fully into arm balances. I am progressing well and getting stronger and shaking less, but Dragonfly continues to completely evade me. Even with a block, I struggle to get my foot above my elbow. Do you have any tips? I can't seem to work out what the problem is. For Grasshopper pose or Dragonfly pose, we begin in Standing Pigeon. And we'll come down, twist. And the foot needs to be above the elbow because when we come into the pose, the foot needs kind of a ledge to stand on. So if you're having trouble getting the foot up here, this is hip flexibility. And there are a couple things you can do to open up the hips. One that I like is to start with one shin parallel to the edge of your mat. Take the other leg and stack the foot on top of the knee, and then the knee on top of the foot. Now if your hips are really tight, your knee might be up here and you'll definitely feel something here. If that's the case, that's fine. Just stay where you are and breathe. If you're sitting here comfortably, you don't really feel anything, you can spider your fingers forward. As we're doing this, we want to keep the low back as long as we can. So instead of rounding to come forward, we want to melt the lower back forward and stay as long as we can. Maybe you can come all the way out, and you'll definitely feel it there. Make sure that whatever you do on one side, you want to do on the other. So we'll stack the other way. And you might even notice that one hip is really tight and one's really open. That sometimes just happens depending on if you're always seated at your desk with one leg crossing all the time and not the other. Another thing you can do for hip flexibility is pigeon pose. So for pigeon pose, I often get asked if the front leg needs to be parallel with the short edge of the mat, and it doesn't. Whatever works for you is totally fine. So we're going to round the shoulder, or roll the shoulders back, puff the chest out, and you'll feel it right in here, which is what you want, because this same shape of your body is essentially what you're doing when you're coming into dragonfly pose. And then coming down. So I hope that's helpful. Just keep practicing your hip opening practices, and I think that you should see some progress. Another thing you can do is to take photos to document your progress, because sometimes it feels like we're not making any progress, but over the course of a week with consistent practice, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, you'll definitely see a change. Thanks for watching this week's installment of Ask a Yoga Question. If you have a question, you can leave it in the comments section below or over on the yoga forum at forum.yogabycandice.com. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.